Hey, how is it going? Liron here, and in this lesson we're gonna take pretty much everything we've learned so far and put it into one painting process that looks from afar fairly realistic, but don't get it twisted, there's actually quite a lot of simplification going on here if you look at all of the small details and all of the elements, but also if you just take a step back, look at the colors. There are none. So we basically completely simplified the colors and we're working just black and white monochromatically. Now the idea here is I want to show you how you can greatly simplify your subject while also maintaining that beautiful, realistic feeling. Okay, and I think you're going to really benefit from this one. So let's get to it.
Okay, so this first part of the process, because I have decided to split it, it's going to be about the drawing and the sketching, because it's a bit of a longer process, and it's really important for me to explain properly. This painting is going to be fairly realistic compared to the other ones, which means we're not really simplifying the shapes here, so the drawing needs to be loyal to the source, to the reference, and this is exactly what I'm doing here, which means I need to take my time with the drawing, make it a little more detailed, a little more accurate, and a little more on point compared to previous examples where we could get away with simplifying a lot of the shapes. So here's my main tip for drawing properly. That's the one thing you want to follow that will help you all along. Start from big to small. Start from the large macro details, then move on to the smaller micro details. And in this instance, it's the shoes, their overall shape, where they are placed, where that line crosses through them, which may be a table or something like that. So I really am taking my time figuring out exactly where the shoes are. So the left shoe starts on the left side of the page, obviously, and it moves all the way to almost a fifth from the right side. The other shoe is placed on top of that. You can see its bottom, you can see the sole, and it reaches almost all the way up to the top. The bottom edge of the bottom shoe is really kissing the edge of the page, which usually I won't do. But for this, I don't know why, I just loved the composition of the photo as is. Now, also, when you're really rendering the details realistically, as you'll see me doing later on, you can get away with a lot of more awkward compositions because of the realistic nature of the painting. But in any case, now that I have the general placement of the shoes and I'm fairly happy with it, and I compare it to the edges of the shape of the page, I really look at where each part of the shoe meets the edges of the page. I can start dividing it into smaller shapes. The one that looked the most accessible to me was the sole, the side of the sole, so I put that in. Now notice I'm still not putting in those small triangular shapes. It's still not the time to put those details in. Now I'm dividing the front of the shoe, where the edge comes and it turns into this the white color, and the cloth part, the fabric part, whatever you want to call it, the formal terminology of shoes. And I am speeding things up a little. Okay, this is about, I don't remember the speed actually, but it's sped up. It's not natural speed. It's maybe double or triple or even quadruple speed. So it should take longer. Okay, don't worry if it takes a little longer. Now I marked the middle of that curve. You see just above that that connection with the white front of the shoe and the back fabric part, or the most of it, that's the middle of that curve. So I'm putting that curve in as accurate as I can. Curves in perspective are hard. Rounded lines are a challenge. I tried putting it where I see it, but again, my lines are still light. Nothing is final. I'm still kind of placing things in very carefully and open to change. I know some of these shapes may change. You want to take into consideration, again, 3D objects in space, what they look like, figure out what shape wraps around what other shape. For example, that the sides of the sole, the bottom of the shoe, is wrapped around in this plastic looking thing. You want to make sure it feels like it's wrapping around it. You want to make sure the front part is rounded. This part that I just went over, you want to make sure that the seams make sense where you draw them, that they follow the shape of the shoe when it curves and kind of folds in the cloth. You want to pay attention to all of these small details. But in order to really figure out where to place them, you have to start with the big shapes. So yeah, you see I'm showing the seam line, and that's really important because it's going to tell me where those rounded shapes that the laces go through will be, where the lace is. Just generally speaking, the laces are a pretty prominent feature. They're very light. They're at the front of the shoe, so I want to make sure I put them in interestingly. So if you look at their curves, they're different. One is curved like inwards and another one outwards. They kind of face each other in an off-center way as well, measuring the distances between these parts. I forgot their name. I actually knew what these are called. But yeah, it's just a slow, careful process. Really, that's what it's all about. And a lot of the mistakes people make in this stage are actually just out of being too much in a hurry, believe it or not. If you take your time with this stage, you can do a really good job at it, even without proper drawing technique, as long as you compare enough elements. So, for example, I see where this line meets the other line. I look at, like, the lace here goes to the right. It moves quite horizontally, and then where does it meet the other shoe? Does it make sense? Is the placement, when I pull the line that I feel like represents it, does it feel like it's wrapping around the shape of the shoe? Does it, if I pull a vertical or horizontal line, does it intersect with the right details, or did I get things a little crooked? And you can continue improving upon it more and more and more. The reason I'm even going into these details rather than just skipping this stage is I do want to show you how even when the simplification is very subtle and you still want to put a lot of details in, your drawing has to support it. Your drawing has to be detailed enough to give you something to work off of. Very soon, if you'll stop too soon with the drawing stage, you just won't have enough detail to work with. And I'm not even still indicating the light and shadow. By the way, notice this is all just me drawing the shoes and their details, because there are the elements of light and shadow and where they are, and it is important to draw these as well. You will see me doing them now. So now we're really speeding things up because we put in most of the important details. The rest is just going to be putting those very finer details, like this label at the back with the Converse All-Stars. These small triangles that I'm kind of getting in still in a simplified manner by using these diagonal lines and then crisscrossing them and dividing them into two. All of these smaller details that pretty much anyone can add because you have a strong basis. You know where everything is, where the major elements are. So if you want to get an idea for how detailed my drawing is when I create something that's meant to look a little more realistic and a little more detailed, that's a pretty good indication of what it's going to be. And it actually means I will add the text. This is the shadow area and some details. I will add the actual text because I feel like if I wing that, it does hurt the end result, so I need to put it in. You'll see me putting it in just a moment. All of these patterns of light and shadow, of the laces casting it on the cloth, these are all very important. As much information as I can get so that I know where to place things, but the only limit to that is I don't want to confuse myself. So you have to keep it clear and slowly learn what helps you and guides you along. That's, I think, the main part. But in any case, we're really close to finishing this one and this lesson, and I will see you in the next one.